remember seeing a photograph once of Princess Diana. It was taken sometime in the 1980s, about 1987 I think. And she was holding the hand of a young man who had AIDS. AIDS was new at the time. First case hadn't been recognised till 1981. It was new and it was poorly understood, and there was a great deal of fear and misconception and prejudice around it. People didn't know how the disease was transmitted. They thought touch was a possible vector. The picture of Diana holding that young man's hand caused quite a stir at the time. She broke all sorts of royal protocols and medical advice, all sorts of public taboos and fears. She did something that few people would do. And she did it deliberately and consciously. I wonder how that young man felt when Princess Diana, the Princess of Wales, visited him and reached out and took his hand. In the photograph, there's no sense of fear on her face or on his. You know, the people who'd been caring for him, looking after him, you know, they were all gowned and gloved. And Princess Diana took hold of his hand. I wonder what that gesture meant to him. His face is bright, it's cheerful. And I think reaching out and touching him like that, breaking those taboos, overcoming those fears, she touched more than his hand. She lifted him out of that situation of isolation and fear and wondering. Since then I've seen many other pictures of Diana doing similar, including with people, children especially, suffering from leprosy. She seems to show no fear. She just seems to exude compassion for them, and she reaches out and she touches them despite objection and medical advice, despite all the protocols that she should be observing. She breaks down all of that. She breaks down the prejudice, the conventions of our society, and she touches people. And in that touch, she lifts people out of their situation, even if it's just for a moment. I wonder if she was thinking of that gospel, today's gospel, as she did that, where Jesus reaches out and touches someone suffering with leprosy. A leper came to Jesus and pleaded on his knees. "If you want to," he said, "you can cure me." Feeling sorry for him, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. "Of course I want to," he said. "Be cured." And the leprosy left him at once, and he was cured. Jesus immediately sent him away and sternly ordered him, "Mind you say nothing to anyone, but go and show yourself to the priest and make the offering for your healing prescribed by Moses as evidence of your recovery." The man went away, but then started talking about it freely and telling the story everywhere, so that Jesus could no longer go openly into any town, but had to stay outside in places where nobody lived. Even so, people from all around would come to him. I wonder if there's something similar going on in that gospel as I saw in that photograph of Princess Diana. Jesus reaching out and touching a man with leprosy. and touching him not to heal his leprosy, but to heal that sense of isolation that accompanied it. As with AIDS in the 1980s, so leprosy was much feared and much misunderstood. So feared, in fact, that anyone with skin blemishes could be suspected of having leprosy and treated as if they did. And people didn't know how it was spread. It was contracted. So they were literally expelled from society, forced to live apart in isolation, to depend absolutely on the goodness of others, family particularly, for their survival. But it was a painful and a lonely life. Because not everyone who was suspected of leprosy had it, there was possibility of being reintroduced to society once you've proved that you were clean of the disease, proved it to the priests. But for the most part, that wasn't the case. People would shy away from those with leprosy, keep them at a great distance, have nothing to do with them. And yet Jesus reached out and touched someone. He didn't need to touch them to bring healing. But maybe he did need to touch them to shatter that sense of isolation, of being excluded. Jesus at least included him in his own company, welcomed him into his company. You know, if you speak to people at the moment, one of the things most people say that they miss a lot are hugs. You can't hug those outside your bubble. Grandchildren can't hug grandparents. Uncles can't hug nieces and nephews. All sorts of people we would like to hug and can't. Even at funerals, families aren't able to hug each other. And people say they miss it. I'm sure they do. I do. Maybe there's something in that we need to reach out and break. I'm not suggesting that anyone starts breaking COVID regulations and starts hugging people outside their bubbles, but maybe that feeling, that need within us highlights a deeper need, a deeper sense to be in contact, in touch with others. Maybe there are things that we can do to help alleviate that sense of isolation that many are experiencing for all sorts of reasons. Not just COVID, but COVID has highlighted it. There are people who are isolating because they're vulnerable, because of their age or because of their health. There's people who are isolating because of someone else. They don't want to risk affecting them. There are people isolating because of their job so that they can continue to do it. There are all sorts of people who are isolated. Maybe in Jesus' actions, there's an invitation for us to, well, maybe to start by asking ourselves, who are those who are isolated in our community? And then ask, what can we do? If we can't physically reach out and touch, how can we touch people? How can we reach out to them? Maybe it's as simple as picking up a phone and speaking to someone. Who knows? You might be the only person they speak to that day. Or knocking on a door of a neighbor or someone who might be isolating just to let them know that you're there if they do need anything. Maybe you could send someone a postcard or even an old-fashioned letter. There are all sorts of people who are isolated and all sorts of ways that we can reach out to them. Maybe Christ's example is an invitation to do just that, to let somebody know that we care